Everyone, and welcome. I'm Megan Reed. I'm with Vibrant Communities Calgary, along with my talented colleague, Jacqueline Silbernagel. On the screen, she's to my right. So if this isn't your first time at the 369 series, usually we have a couple of elders opening for us. Unfortunately, elders Wallace and Florence weren't available today, but I'm hoping that you'll join BCC in a moment of reconciliation and reflection. So I'm just I should have asked if I could share my screen. Stacy or someone? Thank you, got it. Okay. So traditional land acknowledgements often start with where we are. And of course, we are on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, Treaty 7, as well as Métis Nation Region 3. And in Enough for All, we have done a lot of work with all nations, but the definition you'll see of poverty, which is in Blackfoot in our Enough for All strategy, means to have empathy and compassion for someone. And it also outlines that we have a responsibility as a society to fix poverty using that empathy and compassion. So providing services and opportunities to help people become independent again and resilient as the Indigenous people they are, coming from that strength-based approach and building an understanding and mutual respect. I've been thinking and grappling a lot about land acknowledgements and how we do them, probably for a long time, because we work with talented Buddy Dixon, who's our Indigenous engagement liaison. But recently I found it harder given the discovery of the murdered children at the Kamloops residential site. I don't know if anybody has gone to the CBC residential school tracker. You can see residential schools all over the country and where they were. And so I live here in Brentwood, next to Nose Hill. This is my location. And I discovered that the closest residential school to me that ever existed is only 8 kilometers away. That means for everybody here, you're pretty close to a residential school. And of course, there's a lot more. And that residential school was Indian Sarsi Residential School, which is otherwise called, at the time, it was St. Anne's Residential School. And what we do know from elders and knowledge keepers and people like Justice Murray Sinclair, who was a commissioner on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is that where there are residential schools, there are graveyards. So these are pictures of children that would have likely, well, that did go to that school actually. This is from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. If you don't know that site, I encourage you to check it out. And in all records across the country, we don't know if some of these children made it out, and we don't know if some of these children are still there. And from a VCC perspective, we sort of look at this from a place of, like, we have lost the wisdom that could have been in this room today with all of us, of some of those kids who would have been elders today. And so we mutually on this call have a responsibility to try to hold space for that wisdom and then to engage in our own acts of reconciliation. Because we are about learning and kids, I thought I would post this. If you haven't seen the St. Anne's Residential School Project, St. Anne's is in Anishinaabe territory, then I would check it out on CBC. And this was a letter that was written from a child who was a residential school survivor at St. Anne's. This was written when she was a child. So it says, "We live here at St. Anne's School. Some of us are from far away, like Wisink and Moosonee, and some of us are only from Fort Albany. We like school, but sometimes we are sad. We are wanting to see our families at home. Maybe they are wanting to see us too." So those are words from a child. Reconciliation is an action. And I think we're really at a point in time now where if we are not actively contributing to reconciliation, then we are actively taking away from reconciliation. And so what I'm going to invite all of you to do, and you can close your eyes, that's how I choose to reflect or not, but I would like you to join me in 215 seconds of reflection. And during that time, I want you to think about these kids that you see on your screen and how we are holding space for them in this meeting and in your work as well. And I'll sort of bring us back when that 215 seconds is done. Yeah. Thank you. So I'll bring us back. And I hope that that reflection was helpful. And I hope that you all and we all as settlers think about how we'll take that intention to contribute to active reconciliation from this moment onward, and through your own learning and organizations learning, you can do that. And I invite you to join with us at VCC as well in that journey. So that said, I am going to hand it over to Janelle.
Hi everyone, thanks Megan so much for that. And I took some time to reflect, and there's a nice connection actually to LENA from what you've just been talking about. And so each week our families are given a book, and the week that the discovery was made in Kamloops, the book that we coincidentally chosen was We Sang You Home. And that was the board book that our families received. And I think it's a pretty powerful reminder of how important that representation is in books. And those are some really great conversations that we have at Calgary Reads and that we've had in our LENA community of practice. So it was just really nice that our families are receiving those books right now. And I'm so excited that Caitlyn is here. She's been, oh, Stacey's showing us the book. Write it down, everyone.
I'm giving you another recommendation. Sorry to interrupt, Janelle.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so Caitlyn is the growth manager with LENA. LENA is based out of Colorado, and Caitlyn actually has been a part of the LENA partnership in Calgary since its inception. So she's been involved the whole time, which is really fantastic. And I think what's great is we do get to work closely with the entire team. It's certainly an organization that is always willing to be supportive of our work in Calgary and is really accessible to us and to all of our partners. And it's also great to see lots of our partners are on the call today. So I'm not going to go through Caitlyn's sort of description because you guys all read that in registering for the meeting today. But we're glad that you're here, and we look forward to hearing more about LENA.
Thank you, Janelle. It is a pleasure to be with you guys this afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this Calgary 369. I am going to share my screen so you can see some slides that I have to share. So in my role at LENA, I have the privilege of working with childcare centers, school districts, libraries, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies, primarily in the US, but also in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. I've been with LENA for 4 years and have seen how the brain building power of early talk can make a difference, not only for children and their families, but across entire communities. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you more about our programs and research and technology, as well as the impacts that are happening in Calgary and around the world. So as Janelle mentioned, LENA is a nonprofit. We are based out of Colorado, but we have staff across the US, and we partner with organizations around the globe. All of this on a mission to accelerate language development in children birth to 3 to improve their cognitive, social, and emotional health and to close opportunity gaps. Our team at LENA includes researchers, SLPs, curriculum specialists, engineers, and many others who make all of this possible. Researchers around the world use LENA to provide an objective picture of early child talk environments. But we also use this technology in our community-based programs for families and childcare providers. Almost 3 years ago, Calgary Reads became the first organization in Canada to host the LENA Start program. I remember getting that call from Stacy and kind of the connection through Campaign for Grade Level Reading and working through all of the initial setup for the program and seeing kind of how things have grown and changed over time. LENA began more than 15 years ago, really with this research from Drs. Hart and Risley, published in Meaningful Differences in 1995. This idea that early talk and interaction are the construction crew that creates foundational brain architecture in children. Previously, in research like this, that meant spending days observing children in their home or classroom environments, recording and transcribing this language exposure. So studies like Hart and Risley's took several years from the time they collected data to being able to publish and analyze results. Our founders were entrepreneurs who had pioneered reading, math, and testing products that are used in schools in the US and more than 50 countries worldwide. And as they worked in these K-12 environments and saw, that many of the foundational skills children needed were being laid long before they ever came into a classroom. So inspired by the work of Hart and Risley and knowing the power of early talk, they set out to create a way to measure that. So after 6 years of development and a lot of financial investment, LENA technology was born. And since then, LENA technology paired with other tools like fMRIs have allowed researchers to look inside children's talk environments and understand how these early interactions are really shaping a child's brain physically. These results that we've seen have been extraordinary. So we've learned a lot more about the power of back and forth conversation and how that impacts children all the way through their teenage years and into later life outcomes. So that technology looks a little bit like this. I know many of you, again, are partners or researchers who have seen some LENA in action, but it's a small device that goes in the front pocket of a vest worn by a child for a full day. And so this talk pedometer technology, combined with our cloud-based software, delivers detailed feedback reports to help adults make proven sustainable increases in interactive talk. And the two primary things that we measure are adult word count So the number of words that a child hears from adults that they're with during the day, but more importantly, conversational turns. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page with conversational turns, that's what we talk about all the time at LENA as those simple back and forth alternations between a child and an adult. They're our way of saying serve and return interactions. So we think of it like a game of ping pong where we're going back and forth, and we want to try and keep that volley going with a child as long as possible. So when a child serves up language, we want to be there to respond. And vice versa, we want to make our serves engaging for children so they'll send it back. LENA technology is unique in that it can automatically count those conversational turns. And we believe that having that data and feedback is powerful to support children's development. And recent research has shown it to be true that conversational turns are one of the most predictive metrics of child outcomes. So there was a series of studies that came out in 2018 and 2019 showing the importance of interaction. And really something that was important to us was seeing that it's not about the number of words that a child hears, but it's really about those back and forth interactions. So in 2018, Dr. Rachel Romeo and her team of researchers at Harvard and MIT published 2 papers examining how conversational turns relate to children's brain structure and function. So her first paper looked at the underlying neural mechanism that makes conversational turns so critical for early brain development. And they identified a relationship between conversational turns and activation in the Broca's area of the brain, which is a language center. In their second paper, they proceeded from that initial study to look at white matter in the brain, what we think of as the information highway. And so really seeing how conversational turns allow the whole brain to work better together. At LENA, our research team, led by Dr. Jill Gilkerson, in 2018, we published a 10-year longitudinal study exploring how conversational turns relate to long-term outcomes. And this study found a correlation between the amount of conversational turns experienced between 18 and 24 months of age and a child's verbal abilities, language skills, and IQ in adolescence. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and some of the takeaways we have in a few moments. The last study was from Teachers College at Columbia University, looking at the relationship between family socioeconomic background, children's brain structure, and children's reading skills. So in this study, they found that children who experienced more conversational turns had greater surface area on the left parasylvian cortex, which equated to better reading skills for these children. So over the past few years, and we continue to share more research that's done by our research partners and about the power of turns. And so we've seen that all of these things that we've known to be true in early childhood through our own experiences and interactions really do have kind of a research-based scientific background behind what we know. And as we continue to learn more about the power of conversational turns, LENA's data set of children around the world, both in home and early care environments, gives us an unparalleled look into the everyday experiences of young children. This spring, our research team released a report called Inside Early Talk. And this took a first look at our data collected from over 10,000 children across more than 120 LENA program sites. And the data that we look at, which is growing every day, shows how important measuring early talk can be for policymakers, funders, and program implementers. So this data lets us see how supporting caregiver focus on early talk helps ensure the success and well-being of all children. And this report is just the start. Our research team is continuing to ask more questions of the data to better support policymakers, funders, and professionals like all of you. So we are always looking for feedback and insights from the field to see what more should we be asking and what more should we be looking at. But one of the important pieces of data for caregivers that we've put out in this report is really a benchmark for early talk. So as an organization that focuses on measuring this, one of the questions we often get is how much talk is the right amount? So is there a universal daily goal, the talk equivalent of 10,000 steps that all caregivers should be trying to reach? And while our general guidance always remains that more talk is better. So whether you come into a LENA program already interacting a lot with your child, you still have more you can learn, but our 10-year longitudinal study data gave us some more insights into where this number might be. And so again, the results of that study showed that 18 to 24 months was the key window. And our data indicates that the aim should be for 40 turns per hour to support optimal development. One key piece that I always want to remind people is that on the journey to 40 turns per hour, one of the key insights we found is that there's a statistically significant impact for every 2 turns per hour. So whether you're currently at 5 turns an hour and increasing to 7, or going from 38 to 40, you're making a significant difference for that child. So how did we get to this 40 turns per hour number? That longitudinal study began in 2006 when we were collecting our normative database. So we were working with 329 children between 2 and 48 months of age, collecting data over a period of time using LENA devices and developmental assessments. So in 2016, we followed back up with that original group of families. About half of them participated, and we did a variety of developmental assessments. Looking to see if what we had measured is their experience in early childhood with no intervention, just capturing their normal everyday life. Did what we measure have any impacts and predict what we were going to see 10 years later? And the answer was yes. And that's where we got that, conversational turns really were the measurement that was most predictive. And so then looking further at that, we look at the conversational turns when participants were in the 18 to 24 month range, and then their middle school assessments of full scale IQ and verbal IQ. And so this is the data that our team looked at to get to the 40 conversational turns per hour. So once we hit that 40 turns per hour, where the purple lines are, we see those starting to plateau on every additional turn, providing less and less additional benefit. So this is how we got to that goal of 40 turns per hour, and seeing that as a target for caregivers. And when we think about that for families, Janelle and others who have seen family reports and worked with families, there may be families that say 40 turns per hour sounds like a crazy number. Like, does that mean that I'm talking to my child all day, every day? Because sometimes I need a break. And so we looked at that with our large data set to see for families who were in that high talk category, what did that look like? And so what we see is that it's actually attainable to hit 40 turns per hour. It does not mean that you're talking nonstop and you're not talking all hours of the day for the entire hour. So for a typical high talk family, we see that in a 12-hour day, they are meeting or exceeding the 40 turn per hour threshold for about 8 of those hours. And so this is an example here. And if we zoom in on that 12 o'clock hour that we see them meeting that goal, we can break it down and see that within that hour, we're finding typically about 25 minutes of the hour are a high intensity period. So there are quiet points and points where there's not a lot of interaction happening during that hour, but they're making the most of those interactive times. And if we break it down further into a 5-minute period or within that 25-minute period, there are minutes of silence. There are minutes of 1 turn. There are minutes of 2, 3, and 4 turns. And so again, there's lots of variation. It's not about being a nonstop conversationalist in your home. but really about making the most of the times that we are interacting. And so at LENA, we look at our data and we're looking at research. And the goal of that is to put it into practice, to make it something that's actionable for caregivers. And so from our Inside Early Talk report, we released a new infographic called More Talk. And so it's 6 simple strategies with little graphics that is an easy to share resource with caregivers of, how do I build interaction in those everyday moments? So it's something that's really easy to share and a way to turn those insights into actionable takeaways for families. All of the messages in our More Talk graphic are connected to LENA's 14 talking tips as well. And so for those of you who, again, have been part of LENA programs, you'll probably be very familiar with 14 talking tips. But these are research-based techniques for increasing early talk. These are used in all of our programs as a framework for teachers and families to increase interaction in daily routines. They incorporate the key ingredients of creating joint attention, increasing turn taking, and recasting. So for families who are in LENA Start, each week they are using these talking tips as they learn more about brain development and examine daily routines like meal times or clothing changes to identify ways to increase interaction. As we think about the data and how it impacts our work, a key piece is knowing what is currently happening in our children's experiences. And in most cases, we simply just don't know because we aren't measuring it. This data is showing that when we ask people how much they talk, they'll say, oh, I talk a lot more than average. And then when we actually measure it, we find that they don't. And so we know that as human beings, we're not well calibrated on talk. It's not something that we're good at estimating or being understanding where we are with that level of engagement. And so that's what LENA is all about. Is we know the importance of early talk, and we know that it's hard to change something that you're not measuring. And so we do that through our 3 programs, both for classrooms and for home language environments. So I'll shift gears now to talking more specifically about, what we're doing in Calgary with LENA Start. So again, we connected with Stacy in 2018 and began working on funding opportunities for bringing LENA Start to Calgary. So with support of a local funder, as well as some matching funds from LENA, we were very excited to launch our partnership in the spring of 2019. In the first cycle, 20 families registered to participate, which exceeded expectations for everyone involved with LENA. I will say most communities do not have such a robust response for their first LENA Start group. So since then, the team at Calgary Reads has reached 125 families through partnerships with Foothills Creative Beginnings, the Alex, Calgary Public Library, YWCA Calgary, Trellis, and Families Matter. So not only have you reached a lot of families, but it's been happening through really robust partnerships that are meaningful and bringing in all different parts of the community. So what exactly is the LENA Start program and how does it work? LENA Start is an evidence-based group model for families that uses regular feedback from the LENA technology to help increase interactive talk between adults and young children. So over the course of 10 weekly sessions, parents of children aged birth to 33 months learn how back and forth conversations boost their child's brain development, along with simple ways to incorporate more talk into their daily routines. The curriculum and resources are available in both English and Spanish. And we now have virtual delivery options available. So that has been a great way to continue reaching families, especially over the last year. Each weekly session has a topic related to early talk. We begin with the core content of what LENA Start is and why talking to and with your baby is important, as well as our 3 main techniques for increasing back and forth interaction. So shared reading, songs and rhymes, and LENA's 14 talking tips. From there, we look at how to build interaction in everyday moments, like when we're out and about or at meal times. And when families complete the program by attending those first 4 sessions and at least 3 of the remaining sessions, and also completing at least 6 LENA days at home. And when they do complete a LENA day at home, they get a feedback report that looks like this. So again, we're measuring adult word count, conversational turns, and minutes of TV or electronic sound. On the left-hand side, families are seeing their progress from week to week as they're working on incorporating those new skills and techniques. And on the right-hand side, they see the hourly breakout for their most recent day. So again, they're able to see kind of those rhythms and routines of interaction that we know that there's going to be quiet hours. Right now we're at a quiet hour at our house when my little guy's napping. And so we start to see those rhythms and routines and know where there are opportunities to increase interaction and where we're already having some strong interaction. Overall, for all LENA Start programs, we see that there are significant changes for the adults who participate in the program. Our kind of overall, across all of our program sites, we're seeing a 38 percentile gain in adult word count and 16 percentile gain in conversational turns. And those parent changes lead to child changes. So children are gaining 2 months of language development for each month their parents participate in the program, as measured by the LENA developmental snapshot. So it's great to see kind of the overall data from LENA programs, but I think what's even more powerful is to see what's happening in Calgary. So we're seeing some very exciting changes for your community, particularly related to your goal of serving lower talk families. So for parent changes, relative to where families are entering the program, which are blue bars, graduates are showing a significant increase in both adult word count and conversational turns. So on the left-hand side, we're seeing for all families. On the right-hand side, we're seeing for the subset of participants who are considered lower talk families. And that's if they began the program below the 50th percentile in either words or turns. These families had greater gains in adult words and conversational turns. And the fact that the observed change in conversational turns is lower than that for adult word count is not surprising to us. That's very common. It's a lot easier for me to change the amount that I'm talking to my child than it is to change the amount of back and forth interaction we're having. So it's a harder thing for us to change, but you guys are doing that and seeing increases. We're also excited to see that you guys have an 85% graduation rate in your community, which is higher than our kind of average across all sites. And shared book reading is emphasized in the program. So like Janelle mentioned, giving books to families each week. Parents are reporting reading 8 more minutes per day, which is a 40% increase for your community. And so all of these changes that the parents and caregivers in your groups are making are leading to strong child outcomes as well. So for the snapshot gains in Calgary, these are also higher than our all program average. So these results show that children whose parents participate in the program are gaining more than 2 months of developmental skill every month. So rather than falling further behind, these children are actually catching up and surpassing their peers. I think the most exciting piece I see is when we look at those snapshot results for lower talk families, we see that those children are coming into your LENA Start program at just over the 25th percentile. So they're behind their peers in language skill, both receptive and expressive. And by the time their families are completing the snapshot or the LENA Start program, they've now surpassed average language development for their age. So this is really where we see with snapshot, that opportunity gap being closed, that you guys are getting children on track, and with their parents, getting them on track with their peers so that, you know, they're going to enter school ready to learn, and have stronger outcomes later in life. So that little piece is the most exciting to me, seeing those lower talk family snapshot scores. Janelle, is there anything you wanted to say about this data?
No, but I think it's, well, yes, I will add to it. I think it's really nice to understand it in the context compared to the rest of the LENA data. So when we're looking at how we're doing in the Calgary context, and all of our partners who are here are a part of that, knowing that in comparison, our families are doing really well. So 8 minutes per day sounds like, okay, that's great. But when you understand it as 40% and you understand that it's higher than the larger data set, I think that it's really exciting. And that's what we're working towards with all of our partners and all of our families.
Absolutely. And the next piece is actually, you know, all of this data comes from the LENA device and a developmental survey that parents complete. But as we developed the LENA Start program over the past 6+ years, we heard all these other great outcomes that families were experiencing. So families that were saying, I feel so much more connected to other parents in my community now, or, oh my goodness, I feel like we're able to communicate so much better in our home, and it's just, there's less stress and anxiety. And so our team developed a survey that is a pre-post survey for families, measuring 8 dimensions of parenting perceptions. So for all Calgary Reads participants, we see that 87% of families are reporting positive changes from the beginning of the program to the end. And the dimensions that are most impacted in Calgary are increased awareness of child development, increased feelings of parenting self-efficacy, increased shared reading, talking about the past and future with their child, and feeling engaged with the community. So this is really exciting to see, that not only are parents increasing interaction in their home language environments, but they're also experiencing so many more benefits. I don't know if there's more you want to chime in on that as well, Janelle.
Yeah, I think this is what I really like about this data. I think it takes something that's a little bit messy and it makes it organized. And I can really see with all of our partners, when we're looking at the outcomes for your organizations, you know, and your vision and mission and values and the way that you're supporting families, this is a really powerful way to go back to your team and go back to your funders and connect this LENA work to the work that you're doing in your organizations. So I think it's really fantastic that it's a part of the surveying for families. And we did this with our group last night. And I think it's a really great measure to report back on.
Absolutely. I think that's one of our values at LENA is it's more than just data. It's more than just technology, that it really is about making changes for families. And we see that there's a lot of different areas that LENA can impact.
And Caitlyn, it took me a while to figure out this chart, but like I'm wondering if something like inclusion and routines is lower because it was higher to start, right? Like they're already, so like I had to wrap my head around this a little when we started using it, but if they're already including their kids in their grocery shopping and stuff, that one's not going to increase as much. So it's a good thing to keep in mind when you look at this graph.
Exactly. That's a great point, Lorraine. And I think that was something it took me a while when we like first set this up too, because you're like, people aren't feeling good about that. And you're like, no, actually it's, nearly 40% of families reported a positive change in that. Not that others necessarily said it was negative, but they might have started out at a 5 already.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the talk too. And that's why the lower talk families have bigger increases, because they have a bigger place to go, right? If you're already talking a lot, you don't have as far to go. So that's why we look at those two different measurements. So I think those are kind of good things to wrap your head around as you're considering this data.
Yes, excellent point. So, when we look at all of this data and we think about, this is pre and post over a 10-week period, it's great that we're seeing these changes, but, does this last? And so there's a few pieces I can share, both from our research team and others, but the first one is related to those snapshot scores for children. So when we're seeing that gain, okay, so now we've got children on track at the end of the 10 weeks, do they stay on track? And so our team does snapshot follow-ups with families after they complete the LENA Start program. So we're up to 18 months of follow-up at this point and seeing that, that yes, those gains hold over time, which is really exciting to see that we're getting children caught up or kind of ahead of the curve, and they're staying there. And so to me, that says that the skills and strategies and techniques that parents are learning during the LENA Start program are things that they continue doing over time with their child. And so it really is something that's sticky and becomes just part of your behaviors and routines. We are continuing to look at this data, so I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future we have 24 months and further follow-up. In addition to our own research team, we do work with researchers around the world to examine many facets of early childhood and language development. So some researchers are specifically looking at the LENA Start program, including here in Calgary, through a partnership with the University of Calgary. And I would love for you to share more about that as well. So we can hopefully get to that with Q&A. But one of our research partners is a team at Iowa State University led by Dr. Connie Beecher. And they've been implementing the LENA Start program with Ames Public Library in Iowa to conduct a quasi-experimental study on the LENA Start program. So they used a comparison group of families who just attended story time at the library. And it was closely matched between intervention and comparison groups on income, ethnicity, and baseline talk levels. So the data demonstrated that families in LENA Start grew in talk and conversational turns significantly more than families who just attended the library or library programs. So again, with LENA Start, we're targeting those adult behavior changes with the expectation that helping adults cement positive habits like reading and talking with children will benefit the children's development. And so this study also confirmed differences in the trajectory of how much children expressed themselves. So infants and toddlers of LENA Start families vocalized about 50 more times a week during the program than their peers. So moving forward, Dr. Beecher is continuing research by studying how children whose families attended LENA Start performed later in school, providing more detail on how the community partnership worked for others interested in doing community-based research. And she's continuing to support the expansion of LENA programs across Iowa. So on that idea of school readiness and the longitudinal, we partner with a school district in Alabama that looked at STAR early literacy assessments. They've been doing LENA Start for 4 years and have served about 500 families with an 84% graduation rate. So another high performing site like you guys. In their assessment of graduating families, looking at those kindergarten readiness assessments they did, they found that children were performing higher on these literacy assessments and were 3 times as likely to have reached their advanced late emergent reader stage entering pre-K than matched control children. So it's exciting. I think one of the things that is always a struggle in early childhood is we have to wait for kids to grow up sometimes to have these longitudinal outcomes. So we're all patiently waiting. And I think that's one of the great things about, the partnerships that you guys have established and working with a research team is, what questions can we ask and how can we measure these things? And, how can we bring together data in our community and look at different points in a child's development. So I think there's still a lot that our team is learning, and we're doing that through partners like you guys. And so, as we look ahead, we're really excited to continue working with the Calgary Reads team as you move forward to support more families in building healthy brains and developing positive language and literacy experiences. So we have time for Q&A, but also I know, Lorraine, you're with us, and if you want to share kind of from your perspective what you're looking at with LENA Start as well.
Sure. I don't have any kind of slideshow.
I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I'm really excited about our collaboration with Calgary Reads. Sharon Walker, who used to work with Stacy at Calgary Reads, reached out to me, and we started to think about possible research collaborations between Calgary Reads and the University of Calgary. And I'm a PhD candidate, and my supervisor is Dr. Penny Pexman in cognitive psychology, and we investigate language processing. And we looked at numerous different programs that Calgary Reads is offering, and we did develop a research question that we had around LENA because it has been proven to be a quite successful program, and particularly the feedback component. We know that's a really integral, kind of one of those three key points of the LENA Start program, and also the most expensive. So we kind of wanted to look at how important this feedback part is. So we are running a device-only control and hope to be able to contribute data for that. So yeah, it's really nice to work in the research side of it and then work in the Calgary Reads side of it too. So it's been a really great opportunity.
Janelle, I think we can hand it back to you, or if there's questions that folks would like to share.
If anyone has questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or unmute yourself, and just feel free to ask Caitlyn or Janelle or Lorraine or anyone that's on the call. Wow.
Maybe there's no questions today. That means Caitlyn did an amazing job and she covered everything.
Well, we're really grateful, Caitlyn, that you came to Calgary on Zoom to be able to share this. That's certainly one of the valuable things that we have gained in a pandemic, is that we've all realized the world's a little smaller and we can learn from experts all around the country. We were so excited when we first heard about LENA. Feels like years and years ago. Anything that happened before the pandemic feels like a long time ago. And I just get so excited as you have continued as a team to ask questions and to bring forward more knowledge mobilization of everything that you've learned through parent-friendly, print-friendly, digital-friendly resources for families to be able to do this work. And it's our hope in Calgary that, we committed to a 3-year run of trying LENA to see if we could engage many other partners who have parents that are part of their community. And we're very excited about the work that Janelle and Lorraine are doing locally to engage new partners all the time. Exciting to hear the stories coming out of the community of practice that they're coordinating. And our existing funding takes us to Christmas, but we're already working with the library and Families Matter and the agencies that are partnering with us dream really big and think about how we can ensure that LENA doesn't leave the Calgary region and it only quadruples or continues to grow over time. So I want to thank Caitlyn for being with us today. And I really want to thank everyone. Some of your names, this may be your first time that you have come to the 369 series. And some of you, you've been to every one. Like, I feel like I should give, Phil Carlton a sticker or something. And there's a few other ones like that regularly show up. We hope that the sessions have informed you about the importance of language and literacy development. That's our intention, but we also want to continue to help people remember that whether it's LENA, whatever it is that we're undertaking, we're doing it in particular, trying to shine a light on those children and families who the pandemic have really shown us are so far from opportunity in many ways. And so positioning the 369 in partnership with Vibrant Communities Calgary has been very important for us to not forget that much of what Calgary Reads does is universal. We can all come to read, but not everyone has the same advantage. And so the children growing up in poverty have been our focus for LENA, but everyone can benefit. Low talkers don't just have an SES attached to them. We all have varying degrees of levels of talk. And even though we have focused the scarce resources that we have on those perhaps most vulnerable families, wouldn't it be wonderful if every single family in Calgary had access to this incredible program and every, what did you say, Caitlyn, 18 to 24 month child and the caring adults that surround them were able to learn these 14 talking tips and change the trajectory of their children's life. I wanted to, yeah.
Sorry, there was just a question in the chat just asking about any data related to immigrant mothers. So I was just wondering if there was some information on that.
Caitlyn?
Yeah, so I know that there are several communities we've worked in that focus on immigrant, refugee, dual language, like specific populations of families. So in the New York City area, we work with Adelphi University, and their focus is supporting heritage speakers, Arabic and Spanish speaking families to maintain dual language use and support increased interaction in a culturally relevant way. We've worked with a group in North Carolina that worked with West African refugee families. In Minnesota, we've worked with Somali populations. So I don't have a research study specifically on that using LENA, but I know that they are part of our greater data set and that there are many of our community partners that focus on recruiting families specifically from higher needs or underserved communities.
Maybe just to add, Caitlyn, because this may also connect to that question, the program materials are in English and Spanish, as you saw. So there are two languages at least, but the important part is that the talk pedometer is not only necessary in those two languages. It is universally able to do what it does, regardless of the home language that is spoken, which is pretty phenomenal that it is able to discern in that way. So that makes it much more usable in an immigrant context, right?
Exactly.
And I'll also add, from a practitioner perspective, the way that the actual sessions are designed for families. There's attention paid to adult learning styles and multimodal learning. So videos can be sent ahead, so families can watch them before they attend the session, and then we're attending them in session. And when we look at, written versus spoken English and sort of where people are at, the language level is around a grade 3 or 4, I believe. So it's really accessible for families if written English isn't high for them. So I think that makes it really accessible, which is critical, especially in all contexts, but especially in a Calgary context.
Thanks, Janelle. Did anyone have any last questions before we talk about what's happening next in September? Other than we're all going to go hug someone? Okay. So we have committed to continue the 369 series for 3 more sessions. And who knows, we'll keep going as long as people keep coming, just as we may hopefully return to some sense of whatever normal is. We believe there's value in continuing, I can't believe I'm saying it, more Zoom calls with experts that can come and talk to us from all kinds of places. So these sessions always happen the 3rd week of the 3rd workday for 69 minutes because it's a 369 series. And for those who haven't heard this pitch before, the vocabulary of the 3-year-old is an incredible predictor of the reading success of that 6-year-old. And we only have really until children finish up that grade 3 important year as they transition to being 9, where they move from learning to read to reading to learn. So the 369 is focused on that 0 to 8 and how can we build a strong community that cares deeply about all children. The 215 that Megan spoke to, the ones that we have in Calgary, all need us to rally around them. So September 15th, mark your calendar. We're going to have Kathy Lee Porter come to speak to us on that day. Kathy Lee is her title is activator, and she's the activator of the Ella Waterloo Alliance. And that alliance is 12 agencies that work in the Waterloo region in Ontario. And they are kickstarting an incredible campaign called Cuddle Up and Read. They are also very aligned with and working with Alberta Family Wellness and the Brain Story. And she's going to come and share with us some of the amazing work that they are doing in that region. Kathy Lee used to be a children's health TV producer. So it's so fascinating to me that a very unique and different person that wasn't a teacher, didn't practice in the childcare setting, has made it her career now to change the children's landscape in that area. So I hope you will join us in September to hear about some other great work that's happening just on the other side of Canada. We wish everyone a really restful summer. It's pretty exciting to think the end of June is almost here. I hope we all will get to travel somewhere and see someone that we haven't seen for a long time. Please take care, stay well, get vaccinated, and we'll see you September 15th. Bye for now. Okay, did Abby go? My little, yes, it looks like she did. You guys, anybody, can I just stop the recording?
Yes, yeah.
And then I guess because it's in my name, it's going to come to